AmandaLand. We up. Oh, what's happening? Dr. Jared! Why are you laughing?
I just love the intro. I love the whole setup. I appreciate it. Yeah.
How are you, Dr. Ball? It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I'm as good as could be expected. I appreciate the invitation. It's good to see you, and peace to your audience.
Wait, what's this going on down here? Did you draw a person with their arms up?
Oh, I forgot that's in it. So, because I use StreamYard too. So, so shout out. We don't work together anymore, but I'll give him credit. Shout out to Brother Diallo, and he came up with the idea, and it's related to our topic. That that when people see misrepresentations of buying power and so-called financial literacy, his argument was they should just throw up the bat signal, the buying power signal, and call for me. And then the rest of that's an homage to the novel Snow Crash and my particular mixture. But anyway, yeah. So yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I did not expect all of that to come out of that. The myth and propaganda of Black buying power by Dr. Jared A. Ball. Okay, I'm really not going to do a lot of talking because I really feel like I need you to explain this for folks, because I know that so many of us have been sold on Black folks spend the most money, right? And we have been sold on that as a positive thing. And I know that as someone who came from Hollywood, this is before I divested from celebrity, we were often told, the argument was always like, well, why aren't we making Black movies if Black people are spending the most money, right? And so that was really the argument. And it would be like, yeah, like I really felt like when people said that I was in my right to feel like, yeah, we should be. Mm-hmm. But then as one begins to decapitalize, you begin to understand, hold up. But if we have the most Black buying power, as they say, then what the hell are we always, why the hell do we have the least legislative power? Why do we have the least economic power? Why do we have the worst air? Why do we have why we got 2 trees in the hood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, so let me also add, I met Dr. Jared Ball. That's
somewhere around 10 years ago, I would think.
I was going to say, it's way more than 10 years. It's like
really?
Okay. Yeah, because I was living in Harlem. I still lived in New York, and I lived in my apartment that I remember. And I came down to talk to your class about digital media. And I was doing a show I used to do called
Things I Learned This Week. Yeah. I was a fan. I still appreciate your work, but I have always loved that particular effort because of what you were trying to do, how you were doing it, the DIY, but with production value.
Yes.
So the quick backstory to that is that was the one time I have ever had access to a budget at Morgan State University, and the last time I had access to a budget at Morgan State University. So the short-lived effort that we had going, the goal for me was to say, well, and there's a long backstory to this that we don't need to get into right now, but maybe of some interest at some point. But the backstory included that we were rebranding and reshaping what would become what is now the School of Communication.
Yeah.
And they built this studio, they put in all this relative amount of resources.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, but I've never wanted to encourage students to go into commercial media, and that was always part of the background tension with me in the school. And so I was saying, well, if they want to do this kind of work and this kind of teaching, because admittedly I'm more of a critical theorist and historian than I am a practitioner. And so I said, well, fine. Well, I want to feature uh, Black people, and specifically Black women who are doing a version of media in this digital media space that is something left of more substantive than, and
Yes.
something but we could also reproduce. I mean, we don't have CNN, MSNBC.
Right.
So I was like, this is, so I just thought what you were doing was great. So I said, let's bring you down and have you engage with the students, and it went very well. To this day, I think it's one of Bear TV's still biggest viewed, most viewed.
Yay! But then why'd they take the budget?
That's a long story that has something to do with what we're talking about today, but it has more to do with me and my politics.
Is it
And
my fault?
not real. No.
Okay.
You were, I mean, you did a great job, I think, but you were an emblem or a symbol of what was at core a problem for me and the administration and the new leadership that they were bringing in. And so it wasn't that you did anything wrong. It was that I was trying to from their point of view, misapply and misappropriate resources to do things that were not in their interest.
This explains why a year later, I was supposed to come to Morgan, and the day before they canceled. The day before.
That's
And,
interesting, but
at that time, like, that was money that I needed. You know what I'm saying? Like, I needed that. Like, it wasn't like, oh, like, I'm gonna go buy me a Gucci bag. It was like, oh, I can pay the last 3 months rent that I hadn't paid now that I'm gonna do this appearance. And they canceled the day before.
I don't have any information on that, but it would not surprise me to find out that there was some connection, because
I think there was a when I, like, pressed it, it was like, oh, there was a higher administrator who rescinded the invitation. They didn't know you were coming. Now they know you're coming, and they want to use the budget for something else. And I was like, what do you mean?
Listen, other than the gracious time you're affording me to talk about my book, I am going to shamelessly promote this project and invite you and anyone else who would want to participate as a respondent to just go to imixwhatilike.org, scroll to the bottom, and check out my Not a Different World HBCU memoir research project. Because I think a lot of what is often promoted as a different world, pun intended, particularly for those of us of a certain generation and yes, TV memory, is not. And there's a lot of unfortunate political overlap between white dominant institutions and
is it .org or .com?
.org. imixwhatilike.org. It's just my link tree, and then at the bottom is a link to a video, and then the link to where they can see more about the project. And it's just inviting you or anyone who has ever been to an HBCU as a student, staff, faculty, admin, or a parent to share some of their stories, because I eventually am going to talk about my now 19 years experience at Morgan, and want to share. Yeah, it's been a minute, and to share a little bit about what is, again, not, unfortunately, the different world people think it is promoted to be, and which is in some ways related again to the topic at hand. But
I mean, I feel like it's directly related, because I want to get into how we see capitalism within the Black context is counterproductive to Black liberation. So when we see HBCUs that are operating within the same capitalist framework as private white institutions, predominantly white institutions, you just got Blacks in the same situation, but with less money, more politics, etc. So talk to us. What is the myth of Black buying power?
So you already touched on what the myth is. The myth is that Black people have what is now said to be approaching $2 trillion in buying power. And if Black people were more, quote unquote, financially literate and responsible and mature, then Black people could use that to finance the revolution and the closing of generational inequality and so on and so
Buy
forth.
some land.
Buy
Like,
some land, set up a business,
that's my
circulate the
favorite
dollar.
Hotep response to everything. You went out there and bought some Jordans. You should have bought you a farm.
Now, the only thing I appreciate what you're saying, I just but a salute to my radical African centered community, and that I do come out of in some way. So I want to show, the popular version of the Hotep has been, been a drag on my militant African centered folks. So I want to, leave some room for, you know but in fact, what is actually interesting is that because the myth has been so pervasive and powerful for so long, it has impacted everyone in the Black community across the political spectrum. So I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I do make reference to what I got a kick out of is that for all the so-called beef we've been taught about between Garvey and Du Bois, Garvey jokes with Du Bois at one point saying, like, homeboy, welcome to my side of things by recognizing that we do have this buying power. So in other words, at one point, they both agreed on this. At one point, Malcolm X supported the mythology. And as I do talk about, one of the unfortunate and I think unwitting major purveyors of the myth is the late, great Dr. Amos Wilson from the very, again, militant side of that African-centered community, who was far from a joke, but had mistakenly misread these reports and claims and then tried to adapt them to his more radical politics and goals. But that's part of what the mythology is meant to do. It's meant to take, whether you're a radical or a conservative, it's meant to have us all expend unnecessary energy on what cannot be a solution. So
what part of it is the myth? Like, is the myth that we spend this money and thus we should be able to really actually reappropriate it in a better way, but we don't? Or is the myth also that we don't even spend this money?
So it's a little bit of both, because one of the problems is that I discovered when I went in to look into this is that all of the claims for buying power since the early 1990s, at least, come from really just one source. It's evolved into two, maybe three at this point, but they all do the same thing. And that's the Selig Center for Economic Growth out of the Terry Business School in the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. And by its own statements, it only exists to help Georgia's businesses do better in reaching their target audiences with their ad revenue. And this is part of the problem. So the myth is, as you said, that Black people have this pool of resources that are ignorantly misspent. But the reality is that the claims of this pool is based on what, as the Selig Center says in its own reports, quote, estimates and projections based on limited survey data of a segment of the Black population's spending behavior. So it's not so it's very important
in any way.
No, it's not an accurate measurement of what Black people spend. It's certainly not a measurement of income. It's definitely not a measurement of wealth. It's not a measurement of what Black people have. It's a measurement of what potentially Black people have only to spend on products and resources and services they do not own and do not control, in some ways need, but cannot be in control of, and then therefore use whatever wealth will be generated to redistribute to help the community and so on and so forth. So buying power, which is my particular focus, is really a subsidiary myth of the grander myth of Black capitalism, which is itself a subsidiary of the grandest myth of capitalism, which is why I always like to joke that the most famous and perhaps most powerful critic of capitalism was himself a white European male, Karl Marx, writing in the 19th century, talking about an almost exclusively white context. And even in that setting, he was saying capitalism does not work. So the idea that we could then plug in colonized African diaspora communities and say, now you can do it, is part of the problem. So what I do in the book is just sort of try to trace relatively quickly the history of the claim and then show how at various points in history it gets rebranded and re-weaponized, and then specifically used, particularly around the 1970s, to target Black communities, to rebrand, as Nixon wanted to, Black power as Black capitalism.
Say it again. Say,
Again, this is not speculation. This is not Jared's opinion. This is documented statements that Richard Nixon wanted to rebrand Black power as Black capitalism. He wanted to redefine it away from any forms of nationalism, socialism, radical Pan-Africanism, and get everybody back on Black electoral politics. And to your point of your earlier conversation, mainstream electoral politics, not some alternative use. And then the entrepreneurial vision. And then this, as he understood, would be designed to undermine the righteous desire of Black and other communities to free themselves, and get all that energy put, even when among well-meaning people. So I'm not saying people who advocate, not everyone who advocates for some Black entrepreneurial solution is the enemy. I'm saying they are caught up in this propagated mythology. And if I can just quickly, one of my favorites that I've learned since the publication of the second edition is, and maybe one day I'll finish another project that will include this argument in it. But what I found that is really fascinating. So for those of us born in the early 70s, we may remember the famous McDonald's commercial featuring the young brother Calvin, who was featured as the stellar stalwart member of the Black community who gets a job at McDonald's and then goes on to become a manager. And then, you know, he's like leading the Black community out of the ghetto conditions and all this. Like it was like
French fry at a time.
One French fry at a time, right? Calvin. I like, but what I and we didn't realize is that this was a targeted campaign spearheaded initially by Richard Nixon, who brought in Ray Kroc, who had taken over McDonald's from the original founders, and told Kroc to develop Black particular focus campaigns and efforts to bring Black people into management of McDonald's, because they didn't want to keep sending white people into the Black community, even just to collect the bag that Black people were getting. So they were like, let some Black managers run those McDonald's. But then it was also explicitly part of Nixon's campaign to get Black people to move away from all those radical isms and back into the safe one of entrepreneurialism.
Calvin got a job. Did you hear? Calvin got a job.
Exactly. So a lot of us will remember that a version, like, because it was such a powerful and long running thing, but versions of that just, exist. And then by today, in this more consolidated and powerful and penetrative and pervasive media environment, it is more easy to promote various forms of entrepreneurialism. So what I do try to track in the book is just, so this is where the myth came from. It had its own different set of origins, which themselves have everything to do with managing labor and suppressing dissent. And, how do we figure out how much to pay people so that they'll continue to work and not, rebel, but then not have enough money to actually not need the job. So it's all about managing exploitation and the contradictions of labor. And
I knew you was gonna piss me off. I told y'all, I said, if Jared Ball's gonna come on here and he's gonna piss all of us off. I knew it. I have guests on here every week who just piss us off, because I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm actually cutting you off. Is because like how things instinctually and then it's confirmed. That's why we need scholars, etc. By the way, y'all, because like the affirmation also drives you to keep doing the work that you're doing, because it also affirms for you that you're not freaking crazy in the midst of being gaslit. But I've always known intrinsically that there is an effort to push me away from being radical. Like there's a very clear effort, right? And then I've come through the school system and I was really good at school, right? And I've come through the higher education system and I did the masters and all the things, but it was still always like, yeah, but like, why don't you go and get a job? Like, you don't need to, be like a rabble rouser, et cetera, et cetera. And as I've grown and matured and done more research, you also realize, you're like, okay, so this clearly the effort to end Black radicalism aligns with the explosion of Black excellence. And you see Black excellence and you think Black radicalism, but if you are an actual Black radical, you know that is not Black radicalism.
No, Kwame Ture was very clear. Black visibility is not Black power. I mean, it's a great
Rua
point.
Benjamin, Black faces in high places will not save us.
That's right. And from the white capitalist perspective, William F. Buckley said of the Rockefeller plan to encourage Black capitalism, scattered success breeds universal hope. So yeah, I mean, so this is, I mean, they're very clear. So like this is so one of the few benefits that I've always pointed to about getting the PhD in media studies is that it allowed me to sit down and in an organized way study the history of the field of mass communication, which is really a study in the origins of US propaganda and psychological warfare if conducted properly. So, you know, there was a little struggle around that too, which led to similar bumps in the road for me, but whatever. But really what I'm saying that to say that we should never be surprised or give undue credit to the amount of effort, time, energy, money, resources spent by the ruling elite in trying to figure out all the various ways to manage a population they very much intend to exploit. So one of the founders of that U.S. field of mass communications research, Harold Laswell, you know, said something to the effect that the goal of propaganda is not, of course, to change the conditions of the community, but to change people's attitudes to those conditions. So, and he was a well-funded researcher put to the purpose of the political ruling, economic and military intelligence elite who funded and put together this field of mass communication, specifically to develop techniques to study all the various forms of the population and to turn Eastern Europeans into good white people, to turn Negroes into good American Negroes and American citizens, and to bring in all these different groups into a level of consumption and labor and acceptance of exploitation that would allow for us to end up where we are today, whereas Forbes reported a few months ago 800 people are worth $6.2 trillion. How do you have a situation like that unless you, as from their point of view, engage in what they call communication as domination or create
Media
all the
is
different
king.
I'm sorry.
Media is king.
Oh yeah,
Like
absolutely.
when we see these No Kings protests, I'm like, y'all protesting the wrong king. You need to be protesting mainstream media. That's the king.
I mean, that you make a good point in insofar as I understand it, at least, that part of the problem with many of these protests, including the disparate liberal politics that are sprinkled throughout it, is that there is an intent to, by design, give them no political outlet. So that's why I think it's important that you and others engage in these conversations about so-called third and alternative parties or various or different ways of engaging electoral politics, however people want to do it, because that is, I think, part of the goal here, to limit the radical aspirations and what are considered options by Black and many other people who have a very obvious and righteous justifiable complaint about what's going on, but really don't know exactly what to do about it. And then if they can just be brought back in to support the next corporate militarist Democrat, from the perspective of those who rule, this is it's a, you know, an unthreatening gathering or set of gatherings and effort, you know.
Connect this to Obama.
So so Barack Obama, for if folks remember, if ever read the work of Paul Street and others, you know, Barack Obama was not a newcomer to anyone who was aware of the Democratic Party machinations going back into the early 1990s. I had the benefit at the time in the early 2000s of working with the late, both of them are now gone, Glenn Ford and Bruce Dixon at Black Agenda Report, who, Bruce in particular, coming out of Chicago, he knew the Chicago political scene. He had been a Panther. He had been in grassroots politics all his life. And he knew Obama and the crew that was funding him from going back, you know. So when he and others, and then Paul Street's work started coming out and all these other, you know, it was clear, as was said of Obama, much like what Nixon said of his efforts with Black capitalism, that Obama was, quote, Black, but not civil rights Black. And if folks remember when I used to watch the McLaughlin group,
Uh-huh.
and Eleanor Holmes Norton, I believe was the woman. Her name was her name. I think
Mhm.
not Eleanor Holmes Norton. Not who I'm thinking. Eleanor. Not the black politician. The white woman journalist. Eleanor Clift,
Yeah,
something
I don't
like
know
that.
the
She
person.
was the regular
Okay.
white woman guest on the panel, or journalist on the panel. But
Mhm.
she said one day of Obama that in other words, he was safe to vote for because he was black but didn't have the baggage of slavery because his father was Kenyan and not a black American.
Which I say, by the way, and people get very angry, but I'm like, that's not a made up concept that I'm
No.
just pulling out of my neck. Like they look at him and Kamala in the same context. And it's not just the baggage of slavery, it's the responsibility
Right.
of
No, that was her
reparations.
language, just to be clear. And
Yeah,
even as a radical Pan-Africanist, I'm able to see how people play different parts of the
of
diaspora against one
course.
another and pull all this kind of nonsense. And that's exactly what they were doing. In fact, there was even that George Washington University study at the time that showed that black women were only willing to vote for him because he had a black American wife of a certain complexion. So there was a lot of, and if people read the David Garrow book about Obama, I mean, the Rising Star book, I mean, it's a fascinating read that I think lends a lot of credence to the line of argument that we're making here about how Obama was a manicured, well groomed, selected, and imposed neo-colonial product. And his goal, I referred to it in some work that obviously nobody reads or cares about. It's
Oh,
tucked away. No, it's
stop.
tucked away in some journal somewhere. But I was talking about the issue of connected distance, and the point being that they could promote him as being black, but he's distant enough from blackness and from certainly those radical traditions that he can be made acceptable. So yeah, so Obama was the point being, and it was even written about. Andrew Sullivan, I remember at the time, wrote about it in one of the white conservative, that imagine what this country can get away with when the bombs are being dropped by a black president. Like there was all this and then he of course was deployed. He went throughout the African continent to tell continental Africans, the problem isn't imperialism and colonialism, it's your corrupt leadership. Then he went to North Africa to speak to the Muslims and say, you don't need violence to free yourselves. Look at the United States and how we freed ourselves with nonviolence and all this other kind of stuff. Like he did all of the things, meanwhile deporting more people than his predecessor, and in some
And
cases
ever.
Trump after him, and other stuff like that. He expanded war and drone warfare. He expanded the gap between rich and poor. He was the most heavily funded Wall Street candidate in the history of politicians up until that point. So he was not. He immediately got rid of. I remember immediately, like my big thing was watch how fast he moves away from the Employee Free Choice Act, and he never said it again, denying encouragement for people to unionize.
Yep.
He got rid of Tom Daschle, who was the last Democrat who said anything positive about universal health care.
Yeah.
Like he immediately was like, so, and then he brings us in this Republican health care plan that everybody is still wedded to, and that people allegedly, some are about to be on trial, have responded to in some
Wait, what?
interesting ways.
Wait, catch me up.
Well, I didn't want to disrespect your stream by overdoing it, but I was making a reference to the alleged actions of Luigi Mangione, that
Um,
that that what he was allegedly responding to, and I did read the book that he was allegedly referring to when in the inscriptions on his bullet casings, deny, defend, deflect, or
yeah.
whatever. I mean, he's responding. The book lays out very clearly. We are wedded to a healthcare industry that is by design here to deny people the care that they need, so that they can increase the stock value and the benefits and bonuses going to the administrators who run and own the insurance company. So all that to say, as all this relates, is that what has been at effort, whether I'm talking about mass comm or buying power or Obama, has been a great effort here has been the intent to redirect in as many counterinsurgent ways Black rebelliousness and the rebelliousness of any other community into very the safe confines of areas that are already accumulated in power and can be easily controlled. And as the 2014 Princeton study showed, this country is not a democracy. It is electorally beneficial only to the oligopoly or the oligarchy that own the country. So by having everybody come back, and when Bruce Dixon, I mean, this is what Bruce was right in describing Bernie Sanders, even as a sheepdog for the Democratic Party.
Ugh.
We can't keep having, all of our radical aspirations are just drawn right back into a party that is, I believe you were just talking about earlier, Nancy Pelosi is using to walk away with hundreds of millions of dollars while everybody's out here starving and struggling. So yeah. Anyway.
So when we talk about the myth of the Black buying power, right? The second part of it was the myth that if Black people just had economic, the one that drives me crazy is if we just had financial literacy, we would see.
Listen. I don't mean to overimpose this welcome you're giving me, but please, at some point,
why do you keep saying that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do I seem like somebody that would pretend?
No. I don't think you're pretending. I'm just saying I don't want to ruin.
I don't want to.
No. I don't want to. You've opened a door, and I don't want to close it behind me.
I would close it. I would be like, okay,
you're right. So fair enough. So fair enough. Absolutely. So I apologize for that divisiveness. But listen, please check out the work of future Dr. Erica Brown, and she's a co-host of, first of all, a great podcast on our collaborative effort, Black Liberation Media. But she co-hosts a great show called Brokish, where she and her co-host Amber talk about Black economics. But future Dr. Erica Brown, who is on her way working on her PhD in studying the history of this claim around financial literacy, has done a better job, or is doing, I think, a better job of dispelling this mythology than I've done with buying power. But it's very similar. It's very similar in its origin and design. That is, that she has helped identify the origins of the claim and the rubric used to determine whether people do or do not have financial literacy, and then has identified how it is itself being used as a narrative, as Dylan Rodriguez says, lexical warfare, as a narrative claim against Black people and other poor communities to justify their poverty as a result of their own ignorance. And she and others have connected financial literacy beautifully to the tradition of literacy in general being used by colonizers to say, oh, these indigenous people, they deserve to lose their land and all that because they can't read. They don't know my language. So therefore they deserve. So financial literacy works in many of the same ways. And when you look at the rubric that is used, do you know how an IRA works? Can you calculate quickly how much this stock would appreciate? Like, this is not why people are poor, because they don't, like, but this is what's used.
But they also put those in place to also keep people from having any chance.
No, absolutely. But they're but the point being that they're not going to address what really creates poverty and inequality. They're just going to create this narrative that can be used to say, Black people are poor because they're financially illiterate. And if they just, and then they have prominent Black figures running around here saying, look, they just, John Hope Bryant is one of my favorite, targets for this criticism, because he's always, oh my goodness, please, everybody, please watch the episode where he shows up on Brokish and gets an education from these two women in about what he's supposed to be the expert on, and he doesn't like it. But he says his whole thing is Black people didn't get the memo. And if we just got the memo like all these other communities and got our credit score up to 700, we could be free. I mean, it is absurd, but they're well paid. It's like a cottage industry to make these arguments and get funded and platformed to go out and teach financial literacy. Remember, that was part of the $50 billion corporate spend after George Floyd was killed. The corporate world came out and said, we're going to put up $50 billion to help the Black community. And when you looked at the fine print, so much of it was about, we're going to set up financial literacy courses and make small business loans, and which is again what Kamala Harris said was her plan for Black America. We're going to get you into crypto, and we're going to get you into $20,000 home loans and stuff like, and small business loans. And it's like, this is not why people's houses are falling apart or their communities are this. They don't need a $20,000 home loan. They need massive investment. They need redistribution, to your point about socialism. That $20 trillion gross domestic product that this country produces every year, that's what we should be targeting for redistribution, not some fantasy about buying power and small business and small this and Bitcoin that and all. It's absurd. So that's how it all is connected. And then with the Obama thing, it's like, see, even in this country, if you produce, even you Black people, if you produce someone as good as Barry, you can be president. So there is nothing, but there's no barrier here. There's no racism. What you complaining about?
I need you to know I get beat up on this internet every day for these thoughts.
No, I thought I had it bad, but then I see you know. So like you go on. So like what I thought was funny is that when I was thinking about today is that you go on Club Shay Shay and at least in some diabolically or perhaps poorly edited way, in some cases, get to offer up your. I get my argument in book dragged on Club Shay Shay by Killer Mike, who goes on there and cusses me out again in some indirect way because he doesn't like my argument or my book. So that's what so it's like a lower level. Like you like
got to go face.
Yeah, you go face it, and then the backlash from it and all of that. I get the very indirect, and I do poke fun at it. Killer Mike has a real problem with me in my book, but he likes to. I think it's that I'm challenging. The book does mention Killer Mike and Jay-Z.
He's like, I do say his name.
I do say his name.
Okay.
But only really to say, but I also say people that not that I hate him, but I also say people who are my heroes like Malcolm X, and my only point is to say that even I'm not judging him as bad. I'm saying they are misrepresenting, even unwittingly, this mythology and these claims. So I just try to point out how that happened. And then it was a long story. He claimed to have read the book and we had a little disagreement in this, that, but he likes to from time to time go on other platforms and make hostile reference to me indirectly. And so that's why I was just kind of laughing, like, because he most recently went on Shannon Sharp's show and took another shot at me again.
Show.
Huh?
People still go on that man's show. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I thought too. Like, I mean, yeah, I had a lot of different thoughts, but right. But yes, they do. And he did. And then he threw out his little shot. And so I'm like, yeah. So on a much lower level, I feel what you're saying.
How? Okay, so first of all, everyone, please address your questions as I've put on the marquee to Dr. Ball. I know you're going to have questions because you talk very professorially, and folks is in the chat like, layman's terms. And I'm like,
oh, really? I'm sorry.
Only one person did, but I shut them down. I was like, stop controlling the conversation. And then I think they went away. But what I'm always trying to figure out, Dr. Ball, is, okay, we know this. How do we shift it? Right. Okay. Ancestral.
So
side.
Yeah, it's a very difficult. I really do struggle with this. So part of what I tried to do with the book, and I have some regret is too strong a word, but I have some second thoughts about my approach. But I was trying to approach the topic without putting as much of my politics in the book as possible, just to get people to focus on the argument and the claim, not be distracted by my radical politics, which sometimes historically has gotten in the way of people of hearing my argument, with the idea of just saying, look, if we just need to get this mythology out. If we can just get this myth out of there, we can start to figure out actual solutions. So I kind of pointed to what I think we need to do. I think that all public, overt, so-called legal work should be about addressing the pockets and accumulated resources and wealth and target them for redistribution. So at minimum, I think we need to be saying, to my point, I don't care if my financial literacy is low, and I don't care if I don't know anything about a bank or a checking account or how to run a business. By simply paying bills, existing, going shopping, going to work, I have helped contribute to this 20 plus $1 trillion gross domestic product. And I want my cut. I want some free healthcare. I want my housing decent. I want some good education, some good food. I want some vacation time. I want my wage increases. All of these things should be part of that. And whenever people say we don't have the money for it, yes, we do. We have 20 plus $1 trillion. We have 800 people worth $6 trillion. That level of inequality is just inexcusable and unnecessary. And I've already contributed to it. Whether I own the pizzeria, whether I'm buying the piece of pizza, if that exchange doesn't happen, nobody's making money. So stop treating me as a consumer in a 70% consumer-based economy as if I'm somehow the problem. And stop telling me not to go buy my $10 latte, and stop telling me to get well, I can't get my hair done anymore, but stop telling me not to get my hair done. Stop telling me not to get whatever we're told. They say don't buy fronts and your rims and your clothes and your $200 Stop telling me that, because if I don't do that, the economy falls. If I don't do that, people who work at Foot Locker don't have a job, and the nail salon doesn't have a job, and the hair care people don't have a job. Right. So the issue isn't that I'm spending. The issue is that all the wealth that's being created from this spending gets walked away with a handful of people. And so I want us to get, so that's what I'm saying. We need to join organizations, become more politically radical. We need to become more offline in some of these discussions. But in terms of online, overt public conversation, I want some redistribution. As I keep joking, I know it's an older reference now, but I'm very Frank White with it. If there's a nickel bag being sold in the park, I want my cut. And if there's money being made in this country, I want my cut. I've already contributed. We've all already contributed. So stop acting like I'm asking for something that's undue. So that's why and I think that if we get past some of this mythology, if we learn more about how the economy works and how we're being exploited, I think more beautiful and sustainable solutions will be developed.
So, I want to that point, someone here said, okay, I agree, but if you give us large sums of money and we spend it on Louis Prada, Gucci, and no land or investment in ourselves, and we are at zero again, how is that not a need for some kind of literacy? And so but I think the operative part here is some kind of literacy, right? So like financial literacy, whenever so I'm gonna say this and you tell me if you agree or not. Financial literacy, whenever it's provided, is always within the context of capitalism. It's always in the context of how do I just make myself win? It never is in the context of how do I understand the ways in which the economy of my community is being taken and shift that to make a community economy that actually grows. Right? So like that is the literacy that Black people would need. And that is not the literacy that is provided whenever we are given quote unquote financial literacy. Am I right?
I think at least in part, you're right. I would want to only add that I think actual financial literacy would be to fully explain again how the economy works and our relationship to it and what then could be really done about it. So for instance, with the example of, look, again, that was sort of my point. If people stop buying all the Gucci and the bags and all of that, then the economy starts to collapse. And the people who work in those stores and the people who work in the trucking shipping lines that bring the products to those stores, everybody loses jobs. So, and the people who work in the store, everybody loses. So you don't want people, at least in this economy, the argument shouldn't be stop spending. The claim then that we should use that money and buy land is also part of the mythology. If as I reference in my book, there's only, I think it was 4 or maybe 5 white men that own more land in this country than all Black people combined. Ted Turner has all the land. So like there ain't no land to buy. And then when you buy the land, again, this is on the assumption that Black people have this 1.8 or $2 trillion, and that this is one pool of resource that could be organized, and then this Black elected officials who would run this fund would then say, we'll buy this plot. So that's not how it works. Secondly, for most people, including businesses, to buy land, you need investment or a loan from another major white, mostly bank or institution. And then you're paying taxes to a white government, and you're paying you're paying money to white-owned electric companies and garage door opener companies, and like everything is like so. Anyway. So and then even if you buy farm, sorry.
The money is still going out.
It's still going out. And then if you buy farmland, what crop are you going to get enough investment in to produce enough of, to sell enough of to enough people to then create enough wealth? So again, that's all part of the mythology. Again, it also suggests that Black people are poor because Black people spent too much time buying bags and clothes and not buying land. And that's not why Black people are poor. And that's not how rich people or white rich people or any rich people got rich. So that's part of the misunderstanding of the economy. So I that's why I'm saying we have to really get past this mythology before we can start developing sound, logical responses and plans. Now, you could always say again, yes, if I only have a few dollars left and the lights are about to be cut off, okay, fine. It would be more responsible to pay the light bill tonight or today and then go hang out with the next check. That's fine. But that's not why people are in that position in the first place. And that's really the only point I'm trying to make. We could all be a little more whatever, but I don't want to have to be super responsible and frugal just to have health care or just to have a decent place to live when I've already contributed to a society that it produces $20 trillion a year for those who actually own the economy. And
it's the same argument that the issue with the climate is because of the individual carbon footprint of, people not recycling their Coke cans and not the actual corporations who are contributing daily on a regular basis to the use of fossil fuels and emissions, etc.
Listen, I was in Desert Storm in 19 whatever.
Like in the Army?
In the Navy. I was in the Navy. And I remember them telling us, I was on an aircraft carrier. This is why I bring it up. On the aircraft carrier I was on 30 years ago, they told us every day that one ship cost $1 million just in gas. It spent $1 million a day just in gas. So that's 30 years ago for one ship. I'm not interested, to your point about being told to close my window or close the refrigerator faster when they're out here. That's what's going on. Never mind what they're out there doing that for. But that, so you're right. We need, this is what Dr. King argued and is often misrepresented for. This is what every great person we've ever put up. There needs to be massive investment and reformation of the society if we want to actually address this inequality. If everything else is at the end of the day smoke and mirrors and propagated nonsense. So that's so that's why I always ask, always more than ever, we need to really, as a former professor of mine used to say, interrogate our preferences. How do you know what you know, and why do you like what you like? No society in human history has put more effort and has had more capability of shaping those two answers than ever. And so I'm not saying we need to change anything, but just ask yourself, how did I reach that conclusion? Because what is often the case where we started, we're working off of mythology and misunderstanding and an absence of data, and it just so easily becomes regurgitated mythology. And again, just look how often I get a Google alert almost every day on buying power. Look how often or how rare, if anybody ever looks, that you see a citation for the claim. People just say it all the time. We got $2 trillion in buying power. Why aren't we doing? Where did you get that from? And then when they do cite it, it always goes back to the Selig Center, to Nielsen, and more increasingly the McKinsey company, which is even more diabolical given that company's history. But none of it is meant to get Black people to better understand how the economy works or what our relationship is to it. It's only there to help advertisers and corporations better manipulate and shape our public opinion.
Are y'all listening? Because I tell them this all the time. I'm like, please think about why you know what you know, how you know what you know. And 9 times out of 10, it came from a source that has no interest in your elevation. None.
And that's why I think I was listening earlier. I think what you point out before, but I think it's important that you and I and others are able to acknowledge that yes, at one point I thought this, and at one point I did. I learned, and that's sort of the point that I get at. So like I get a lot, in some circles I've gotten a lot of grief from supporters of various people that I mentioned in the book, and I'm saying I'm not hating on them. I love Malcolm X, so I'm not hating on him, but at one point he misunderstood this.
That's it.
And that's all I'm saying. That doesn't mean everything else about the man is bad, or at one point Amos Wilson I think misunderstood this, and I demonstrate and show how I think he misunderstood this. But that's only about this. It's not a comment on his whole life's work, which I find very valuable. So
I also think to me, I find that endearing, right? Like
I agree.
This person whom you trust and who has been proven to be about it, righty, also misrepresented this or misunderstood this, and thus, of course, your dusty ass did. You know what I mean? Like that to me is how I take it. If this
Exactly.
man did, well, no wonder.
Exactly. So the only luminary, I do like to shout him out for this and other things. The only luminary that I could come up with that was always right on this point was George Jackson, who pointed out in his own work that he called it out. They call it purchasing power, and then they raise the cost of everything, so it don't mean nothing. And that's essentially what it is. It's a measurement of your ability to enrich others, and it's not even an accurate measurement.
A measurement of your ability to enrich others. Carry that with y'all. It's a measurement of your ability to enrich others. All right. Well, before we go, we have some questions from the audience.
Sure.
All right. So Fatima says, Mr. Ball, do you see a distinction between individual wealth accumulation and collective economic power? How should we think about that tension?
Well, the tension is that whatever we as individuals accumulate it's almost like a zero-sum game. It has no positive impact on the rest of the community. So so the tension is, if I understood the question, that we're encouraged to chase our own individual success, and we do that to the detriment of the benefit of the whole. So it's in some ways, and I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to go too far, but it's in some ways like how I think game theory is in some ways relevant here. That is that rather, long story short, rather than working together so that everybody achieves the better conclusion option, we are, with the encouragement of massive amounts of propaganda, to struggle individually and to achieve our own individual benefit. That's why I even hate that whole thing of if you want to change the world, start with the person in the mirror. Like I get the sentiment, but what bothers me about it is that it denies the collective need. It denies the collective organizational need and the collective movement need, and the need to work with and convince others, and in some ways to challenge others, which is one of the reasons why I think sometimes my argument has a little bit of a hard time finding a hold, because it says that I can't just do better financially and have that mean something for the collective. So it's like when I joke, like in 2019, my wife and I bought our first single family home. And how did that make any of you feel? And how did that affect any of you? like,
Well, I think some would argue, well, individual gain, and I'm just individual, if you can take care of yourself, then you don't require anybody to take care of you. Or if people can take care of themselves, then they're not going to feel compelled to theft or to crime.
Well, on some level, that's true. And that was part of why Dr. King advocated for a universal income. And but to the limits of even that level of relative liberalism, Nixon advocated for the same thing for different reasons. Nixon wanted universal income so that they could reduce the social safety net and the importance that people would, the value people would hold for government. Mm-hmm. And King was, of course, saying, yeah, but everybody should benefit more from what the government the wealth produced for the government, and it would reduce in some ways people's tendency to commit crime. Like
Yes.
I would joke all the time. I'm a perfect example. I grew up in the lower end of the suburbs, the lower end of the income end of the suburbs. And as soon as I got kicked out of the house and was jobless and homeless, it took me. I immediately went to crime. Immediately was a
That
criminal.
man said,
Immediately criminal activity. Now I was terrible at it, which is how I ended up in the Navy, but that's a whole other thing. But immediately. And so like I can always think of that example anecdotally as this is what happens. Like I wasn't desirous of being that way, but as soon as I did not have somewhere to go that night, it was like, oh no, something's
well,
happening. Somebody
right.
got to come off of something, like, so if you extrapolate from that, of course. But so that's what, but that's really the point that and then it also, I think, gets us to misunderstand how society works. There is no I did it by myself and I don't need anybody else.
No.
Even like we all need someone to be doing something somewhere else for us to have what we want, even when we're rich enough to pay for everything. So that's why I'm trying to get everybody, to the extent I can, back on this whole collective thing. Like even the person doing the work we don't want to do is providing something for society and therefore should benefit more from what society's accumulated resources afford. So yeah, somebody might have to do jobs we don't want to do, but they should also have to do it less to have more. They should have more, so whatever that job you don't want to do that it needs doing, let someone else do it. Maybe 3 or 4 people could be hired to do it, so everybody's paid more and works less, and then everybody has more time off, and then we could just start with that and then go from there.
And this is what I've been talking about lately, is like we have to actually think differently, y'all. Like I feel like there's ways in which things have been set up, and people are frustrated that those ways are not working anymore, right? Or they never really worked, but they're like completely falling into dysfunction. And what I see so many people's argument or desire for is like, if we could just go back. And I'm like, it wasn't better before, it was just managed, right? So this forces us to imagine, like a different way of doing things that has an easier, I don't want to say easier, but that has, okay, so you're done. Okay, so I thought I was going to have to take the dog out because he's been here complaining for the past 5 minutes. Can you lay down? No, like while you're talking, he's over here like this. I'm like, what's the issue?
I hope it's not me. He's not responding to me.
It's not you. But I just feel like there is something ripe about, okay, I will speak individually. Since like how you said you went to crime
immediately.
That man said it's the immediately with your eyebrows raised. All of us believe you. He's like, no, I stepped outside and said, I'm robbing you. Right. I feel like when I'm in lack, I'm at my most imaginative. Like I come up with that, like it's innovation, necessity breeds innovation. Like I am incredibly innovative when I am in lack. I have not gone to crime, but I end up going to like my hands. Like, okay, what can I make? What can I make? And that's how I ended up, selling hand-painted bags on MySpace and to try to pay rent. And
I still got one of your paintings downstairs. I just don't have that multi-level, because you sold one when you came to Morgan. I bought one from you when you came to Morgan.
Can you go get it?
Actually, I can't, and that's because we have guests, and that's a whole other thing. So I can't at the moment. I should have. Because
I want to know what pace it is.
It's I want to say it's you DJing. It's a woman DJing.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've painted so many things. I can't even remember. Like people will show me paintings. I'm like, I did that.
So yeah, I should have. Yeah, actually, I should have had it ready because it is downstairs. But I didn't think of it till just now. But that's really it. I don't have because I know you poetry, rhyming, DJing, comedy.
I've done many things only to come back to basically selling pins on Instagram, which is basically MySpace, and talking for free, teaching for free. That's essentially what's going down. We have another question though before you go.
Sure.
Dr. Ball, even though I said Dr. Ball, they keep calling you Mr. Ball, but it's fine.
It's
Mr.
all right.
Ball, what are your thoughts on the stock market, 401k matches, 529 for your kiddos' college? Like, how do we feel about these things?
Look, all of that is so I'm not saying don't have forethought, don't be mature. You know, we're putting money away for our kids. We do, you know, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying don't do all of that. All I'm saying is that's not why Black people are poor.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying. Not understanding a 401k and not doing all that, that has nothing to do with poverty. So if you know, if you want to do a 401k and tacitly support empire and the bombs dropping on kids in Gaza, go ahead. I'm doing it by default because money is taken out from my job by the state. So I'm all, you know, like, but so I'm not. I would also say, as I note in the book, I think it's 1% of the population owns more than half the stock. So stock is not a solution. Like it's not. We're not going to invest our way to equality and freedom. But
if you're in the stock market, y'all, like you can't even escape being a part of. If you're in it at all, you cannot really escape being a part of, like you said, tacitly. Yeah. You're BlackRock owns like the whole thing.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So like like do your thing. Like if
the first time that I had a business manager, this is when I was in Hollywood and whatnot, everybody gets a business manager. So I'm doing the thing that everyone told me I'm supposed to do, right? So I get the business manager and they're like, we're going to put you in mutual funds and we're going to get you a SEP IRA. And you're like, yeah, I mean, this is what you're supposed to do. All right, I'm going to do it. Like I am a big believer in this is not my expertise and this is your expertise. So I'm going to listen to you. So I'm with them doing that, whatever. Then some whole thing happened and I ended up going to a different business manager. The whole thing that happened was I got scammed by people in China.
Oh, wow.
I got scammed, but the business manager did not protect me from getting scammed.
Oh.
And I was like, you need to come up off this scam money. Like you told me to send that check. You told me to. I said, did the money come? And you said, yes, let's send the check. And it hadn't.
And now all of a sudden you want me to read the fine print. You're supposed to be the expert.
That's the reason why you get a cut.
That's right. Exactly.
So long story short, I end up getting a new financial advisor, a brother, and he's like, hey, so you know some of these mutual funds is private prisons? What are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, look, so that's why I'm not, this is why, by the way, this is the same thing, you know, it's the same thing in terms of my, you know, in other area, media criticism about, so that's what I'm saying. I wasn't being critical of Jay-Z and Killer Mike or any other artist or any other person for, I'm not saying you're a bad, you know, I'm saying the decisions we're making are being impacted by a set of ideas that have been imposed by design for a long time, all to keep us from radical politics. So, that's it. We all I fall prey to it. I'm you know, we're all caught up in this. I'm not saying I'm sitting above this, having solved everything. I'm just saying this is what's happening. We got to find a way to struggle against it and work around it or destroy it. And that's it. So, but what I am just emphatically wanting to reiterate and say again and again and again, Black people and no other community for that matter are poor because they don't know what a 401k is and don't know how to set up a bank account and all this other kind. That has nothing to do with the poverty.
And it diverts the energy away from where the energy should be to actually get us out of that.
I mean, sometimes I've tried to say, like in class, like imagine somebody's just standing there punching you in the face and then telling you, you know, like
if you knew how to do a roundhouse kick.
Exactly. Or even keep it in the same context. If you had set up if you had invested more in your Roth IRA, I wouldn't be swinging on you like it doesn't make any sense. Like that's not why you're punching me in the face. Like doing that's not going to stop you from punching me in the face. And that's sort of the point that I'm getting at. The reason propaganda is in the title of the book is because that's what it is. And I try to give some of the history and the context for the propaganda and the point of it and the function of it. but that's why it exists, to get people to and in this most insidious way, to have Black people blame ourselves, have Black people blame them,
Yes.
other Black people, for this horrific condition. And that's what I want to help stop.
My last question for you is, what was the difference between the second edition and the first?
Well, one, a little bit, a couple of tightenings of some
And
arguments
what
and
was the
some
time
language.
frame?
Huh?
What was the time frame?
2020 and 2023 in
Okay.
public. One of the big differences is that Derek Hamilton wrote the foreword to the second edition, and he's one of the leading Black economists in the country. And so I, because I reached out to a lot of economists. Like, I'm not an economist, I'm a Black studies, media studies guy, so I'm only looking at the difference between what is said and what's the reality, the data.
Yeah.
So I'm like, help me out with the numbers. And no one ever said I was wrong. What most economists actually have always said was buying power is not a thing. Nobody uses it, which is part of my point as to why it's a specifically weaponized, targeted item for Black people. Like, nobody is saying what is the buying power of this community as a way of assessing the condition of that community and what they might do about it. It's used for other reasons, but that's not. So they're like, everybody was like, yeah, you're right, but it's just not a thing. And there's no
people say like, oh, like, look at the Asian community, like particularly like the Chinese community, like the dollar stays in their community 13 times.
Nonsense. Please. So I don't deal with that particular in the book, that particular claim as much, but in other work that I do and have been in association with, I got a shout out. He goes by Two Black, is also a poet and an author. Has done some of the great work in dispelling that. My work and we all are referenced in a book by came out last year by Ebony Reed and Louise Story called 15 Cents on the Dollar, talking about the inequality in Black pay, where I and the whole thing about Killer Mike is actually written about in that book, which is kind of funny. But they talk about this mythology, the circulating dollar, and they show where it comes from, how it's false. There's no such thing. The circulating dollar is it, and they challenge even the mythology around Black Wall Street, which is also misunderstood. There's a lot of there's a lot that
What's the name of this book?
Two Black wrote a book called Laundering Black Rage, which I think everybody should read and check out. He also is a co-host of the Black Myths podcast, also on Black Liberation Media. People could check that out. But then the other book is 15 Cents on the Dollar by Ebony Reed and Louise Story, who are two formerly, I think, Wall Street Journal journalists and Yale University professors. I definitely encourage you to check that book out, please, because they show you like the origins. I think her name was Brooke Stevens, who was where the much like the buying power claim, the circulating dollar claim has a false origin in a singular source that no one can find or cite and doesn't exist. No economists use circulating dollar metrics, just like I'm saying, no, they don't use buying power. It's all fugazi to get specifically Black people out of radical politics and an accurate analysis of the economy. So, please check that out. Absolutely. That's the book there. That's the book there. And
Dang, it's like,
yeah.
It's like, Dr. Ball, like,
Yep. Thank you. Yep.
I'll be right, Dr. Ball.
That's the bottom line. Tell him, man.
That's really I be right. I be knowing. And then folks like you come through and be like, yeah, see? Bing. So yeah. I hope the bottom line that folks get from this is that you then also have to keep going with is that there has been a deeply concerted effort across multitudes of mediums to simply just disconnect you from Black radicalism. And the concept of Black radicalism is not radical.
That's a good point.
Like when you said, like, when you were saying, like, oh, you know, you've gotten like people not supporting you because of your radical politics, I meant to ask you, what politics of yours are radical? Like, what are they calling radical?
what they're calling radical is that I'm saying capitalism and black capitalism won't do it.
Exactly.
But it's not really, you're right. It's not really radical. It's
No.
it's really pretty basic, and it's there's a lot of research. There's a lot to add depth to that argument. But in short, that's what it is. That's all it is.
They just be, it's so much easier. I learned from being on what's it called? Interactive One from Radio One. I had a radio show on there, and then my show got canceled under the auspices of Amanda is too polarizing and not consistently funny. I know, though, that I was canceled, one, because I was pro-Palestine and unshakable with it, and two, because I was not willing to endorse Kamala blindly. Like, I was not going to tell everybody to vote for anybody because I don't endorse candidates. However, I was also going to call out Trump on a regular basis, as well as acknowledge when I felt that Kamala Harris was not showing up for the people that she was getting these votes for without question. And in addition, and literally just that was actively challenging Black excellence as a institution, right? Challenging Black capitalism as an institution. That became like counter to a company that peddles Blackness as their main, like that's their whole thing. We're Black. But
Listen,
we'll be the Black people in your ad sales portfolio.
What this society and others have learned from a long time ago is that it really doesn't matter what color or gender or sexual orientation the ownership of media are. It's the ad revenue that determines content. So you could have this very Black, very woman owning Radio One and TV One, and it does not change the content. It's not because she's a specifically horrible person. It's because even if she wanted to be a revolutionary, she cannot be and have any revenue to work with.
Counterintuitive.
Now, she is a conservative woman. I don't happen to agree with many of her politics. That is Kathy Hughes, and
she
many
wasn't
of those,
in the beginning. Like
but it doesn't. But the point is, it doesn't matter.
But that's how you preserve.
Yeah,
right?
no, that's what I'm saying. If you tomorrow became the head of that entire network and operation, it would just be undermined and undercut with ad revenue. You would just lose all your ad revenue. And they'd be like, then they would turn around and say, and add to the list of things to complain about you that Amanda can't run a network.
But and then there's also like, now see, your politics is what got all these people fired. I mean, all these people laid off, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
When to your point, all the research, and shout out to my co-host on Saturdays with Renee. Renee called this out at the beginning and got grief for it. But all the reports are showing now that Kamala really lost because of her stance on Gaza. So like
again, I be knowing, because that's all I was saying, Dr. Ball. That's all I was saying. I was like, if she's gonna win, first of all, let's just contextualize this as if this was a legit election, right? Because let's just pretend. But I was like, you're gonna have to coalition to the left. Mm-hmm. Not to the right. You're going to have to coalition to the left. And people were like, shut up, Amanda Seales. Oh my God. Someone threatened to fight me. Someone knew who I knew in the past. Dr. Ball, she threatened to come to my house, and I gave her my address because I am that girl.
Damn, Amanda. Okay, wow. All right.
Come to the crib.
I thought I was wild.
If you go, well, you're the one that did crime. So you already lived that life. I said, come to the crib. If you really own it. And she said, oh, you live too far because you ain't really on it like that. And by the time you would leave, it would be a reenactment of the scene at the end of Belly.
Oh, damn.
That's why I invite ops to come to my joints.
Oh, damn.
Come on. Let's talk. Because Tommy Bonds was there with the pistol. See, I knew you were coming. Who put that?
Man, rest in peace to DMX. Rest in peace to D'Angelo, who's had a track featured on that in that movie.
Just the slice, want the pie? Why is why till we fry?
Produced by DJ Premier. Yep, absolutely.
That's Primo. Yes, yeah, I forget who I'm dealing with right here.
Absolutely. That's so. No, absolutely. I've been. Somebody. There's a student at College Park that threatened to said, I know MMA next time I see you. And I was saying,
I'll come through with the roundhouse because I got a roundhouse kick in my back pocket, both legs, left and right.
I wish to be the cliche, 20 years ago, maybe, but I got like 3 seconds of fight time in me before the ambulance is getting called for one of us.
Wait, listen.
And
One time, this is completely irrelevant, and now we're basically on a FaceTime that people are watching. But one time, this former manager, I was at an event. He tried to give me a hug, and I was like, "Hey, we not cool."
we're not there yet.
And so then he called me a bitch, like literally just and so my man at the time was like, come on, man, you can't do that. And
now I got to.
Go. So he was, but the age difference was 29 and 30 and 45. Okay, that was the age difference. So he was like, we gotta go outside, babe. So he heads outside. Also, my man at the time is 6'3" and got out the pen like 6 months. So he's very trained up. Okay. And when they came back in, when he came back in by himself 20 minutes later, and I was like, what happened? He was like, man, this sat there for 20 minutes pretending to try to take his watch off.
That's not a bad move. Hold up.
He said the whole time.
Hold up.
He was like, we don't got to do this, man. Just go apologize to her. Like, we don't. He was like, I don't want to beat you up. I will beat you up.
No, but I've been in that moment where you like, damn it, I gotta go out there.
So now you got a new tactic.
Hold up.
This dang on.
If I could just, that ass whooping's right there. Just.
And then a car pulled up and he hopped in and skirted.
That's what he's doing. He's typing on his pick me up quick. Trying to get this watch off. Got face to save.
Like, oh man, Dr. Paul, it's a pleasure. It's been too long.
It's all good. Yeah, you're right. And salute to you and your producer team. And thanks for the second chance because I missed the first email. Yeah,
we hunted him down. But no, you didn't miss the first email. I've been trying to get to you. Okay, I done DM'd you, but you're in the world. You're living in the world. You have children. You have books to write. You're living in the world.
It's all
and then
good.
Claudia de la Cruz was like, "Oh, Dr. Paul, that's my," and I was like, "Okay, we have to figure it out." And I got your number from her.
Well, all right. Well, I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you. This has been great. Salute to your audience. And since you played him early on your show, as I end all of mine, again, I just say peace to you only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And thanks again, man. This has been dope. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Peace.
Peace. Y'all. Amanda.